I didn't arrive like a guest. I didn't knock, didn't ask to be let in, didn't wait for permission. I didn't rehearse my story or prepare my smile. I simply stood, at the edge of something that didn't need explanation, at the threshold of a space that didn't require credentials, at the doorway of a rhythm I had forgotten I belonged to. And the space didn't open. It remembered. Not my name. Not my face. Not my history. It remembered my stillness. It remembered my breath. It remembered the quiet way I used to listen before I learned to speak too much. I didn't enter. I aligned. Not with the walls. Not with the people. Not with the expectations. I aligned with the silence. With the pulse beneath the noise. With the truth that doesn't shout. I didn't bring answers. I brought breath. I didn't bring a map. I brought presence. I didn't come to explain. I came to exist. And the ground didn't welcome me. It recognized me. Not as a stranger, but as a rhythm it already knew. Not as a visitor, but as a part of its own stillness. I didn't arrive. I returned. To something I hadn't known but always carried. I didn't land with certainty. I settled into honesty. I didn't step forward. I softened inward. I didn't cross a line. I dissolved into it. And the entry wasn't loud. It was quiet. It didn't need a witness. It needed a breath. I didn't arrive. I aligned. And that was enough. I didn't fear the silence. I had feared being misunderstood, being unseen, being too much or not enough, but not silence. Silence didn't ask me to explain. It didn't interrupt. It didn't measure me against anything. It simply held me. And in that holding, I began to remember what it felt like to be whole without performance. I didn't try to fill the space. I let it breathe. I let it stretch out around me like a soft, familiar room I hadn't visited in years. I didn't rush to speak. I listened, not just to the sounds, but to the spaces between them. I listened to the hum of the walls, to the dust floating in the light, to the way the air moved when I exhaled slowly. I listened to the part of me that had grown quiet from being ignored. Stillness wasn't emptiness. It was depth. It wasn't absence. It was presence without pressure. It didn't demand anything from me. It didn't ask me to be better, faster, louder, clearer. It just asked me to be. And I was. I didn't perform peace. I practiced it. I didn't pretend to be calm. I allowed myself to slow down. I didn't chase serenity like a prize. I let it arrive like a guest I had forgotten I invited. And when it came, it didn't knock. It simply sat beside me and waited until I noticed. The stillness didn't judge me. It didn't care about my past or my plans. It didn't care how long it had been since I last paused. It didn't care how many times I had run from myself. It just opened its arms and said, "You're here now. That's enough." I didn't resist the quiet. I rested in it. I let it wrap around me, not like a cage, but like a blanket. I let it soften the edges I had sharpened to survive. I let it remind me that I didn't have to be in motion to be alive. That I didn't have to be productive to be worthy. That I didn't have to be impressive to be loved. In the stillness, I found something I didn't know I had lost. The ability to be with myself without needing to escape. The ability to sit in a room alone and not feel alone. The ability to hear my own thoughts and not flinch. The ability to feel my own breath and not rush past it. I didn't conquer the silence. I became part of it. I didn't master it. I merged with it. And in that merging, I found a kind of power I had never known. The power of not needing to prove anything. The power of being enough without effort. The power of being still and still being whole. I didn't fear the silence. I became it. And that was enough. I didn't blur myself to belong. I had done that before. Softened my voice, rounded my thoughts, made myself smaller so others could feel bigger. I had erased my edges, thinking that love required smoothness. But love doesn't live in erasure. It lives in clarity. I didn't shrink to be accepted. I expanded to be real. I didn't bend to be liked. I stood to be known. And in that standing, I felt the discomfort of being visible. Not polished, not perfect, but whole. I felt the tension of being fully formed in a world that prefers fragments. I didn't apologize for my shape. I embodied it. I didn't hide my contradictions. I let them breathe. I didn't pretend to be simple. I allowed myself to be layered. And the space around me didn't reject me. It adjusted. It didn't ask me to change. It asked me to be honest. I didn't soften my edges to make others comfortable. I sharpened my clarity to make myself free. I didn't dilute my truth to keep the peace. I spoke it gently, but fully. I didn't mask my boundaries. I honored them, not as walls, but as invitations to meet me where I truly am. I didn't fear being misunderstood. I feared disappearing. And so I chose to be seen, even if it meant being misread. I chose to be heard, even if it meant being questioned. I chose to be whole, even if it meant being alone. I didn't erase myself to survive. I defined myself to live. And in that definition, I found a kind of peace I had never known, the peace of not needing to be everything for everyone. The peace of being something for myself. I didn't bend to belong. I stood to be. And that was enough. I didn't stay to prove anything. I didn't stay to be praised or validated. I didn't stay because it was easy or familiar. I stayed because it was mine. Because something in me recognized the ground beneath me, not as perfect, but as real. And real was enough. I didn't stay for comfort. I stayed for truth. I stayed because leaving would have meant abandoning myself again. And I had done that too many times before, walked away from places where I could have grown, from people who could have seen me, from moments that asked for my presence, not my performance. I didn't stay to be seen. I stayed to see what happens when I stop running, to see what grows when I stop uprooting myself every time discomfort knocks, to see who I become when I stop chasing elsewhere and start honoring here. Staying wasn't passive. It was powerful. It was a choice, not to settle, but to root, not to give up, but to give in to something deeper. I didn't cling. I grounded. I didn't wait. I witnessed. I didn't endure. I evolved. I stayed not because I had nowhere else to go, but because I finally understood that I didn't need to go anywhere to be whole. I stayed because the space I was in stopped feeling like a test and started feeling like a mirror. And in that mirror, I saw someone I could trust. I didn't stay to be strong. I stayed to be soft. I stayed to be honest. I stayed to be present. And presence, I learned, is not a performance. It's a practice. It's a quiet kind of courage, the kind that doesn't need applause, only breath. I didn't stay to be right. I stayed to be real. And that was enough. I didn't shout to be heard. I didn't raise my voice to prove I mattered. I didn't fight to take up space. I stood, not in defiance, but in clarity. I stood in the truth of who I am, without needing it to echo. I stood without armor, without performance, without apology. I didn't rise to dominate. I rooted to endure. I didn't push forward. I pulsed inward. I didn't conquer the moment. I connected with it. And in that connection, I found a strength that didn't need to be loud. It didn't need to be seen. It didn't need to be celebrated. It simply was. I didn't demand attention. I invited presence. I didn't chase validation. I offered resonance. I didn't try to control the room. I became part of its rhythm. And the room responded, not with applause, but with stillness. Not with noise, but with breath. Power, I learned, isn't volume. It's depth. It's the ability to remain soft in a world that rewards hardness. It's the ability to stay honest when it would be easier to perform. It's the ability to be whole without needing to be perfect. I didn't dominate. I resonated. I didn't impose. I aligned. I didn't force. I flowed. And in that flow, I discovered a kind of leadership that doesn't need followers, only truth. A kind of presence that doesn't need to be the loudest, only the clearest. I didn't become powerful. I stopped pretending I wasn't. I stopped shrinking. I stopped apologizing for my clarity. I stopped editing my truth to make others comfortable. I stopped hiding the parts of me that speak softly but carry weight. I didn't rise above. I sank deeper. I didn't escape. I stayed. I didn't perform strength. I practiced it, quietly, consistently, gently. And that was enough. I didn't arrive. I aligned. And now I stay, not as a shadow, not as a guest, not as a version of who I think I should be. I stay as myself. Fully. Quietly. Powerfully.